This Week in 40K.
Welcome to This Week in 40K, your 1 hour shot of adrenaline right into the veins about what's going on with 40K this week.
Adrenaline, huh?
Yes, that's right. Right to the veins, Billy. Right in there.
Okay.
Yeah, Adrenaline.
Okay.
We are filmed before a live studio audience. That studio audience is a baby.
Mm-hmm. She's right here. She's eating.
Yeah.
Those are the noises you're hearing.
So we've got a lot. We've got a lot to talk about, don't we?
There is a good amount of 10th edition. The spoilers just keep coming. 9th edition is still going strong. You know, not quite hundreds, but almost hundreds of people still attending events this last weekend. And considering it was Mother's Day, at least in the U.S., that probably impacted things. Do they do Mother's Day in the UK? Is that a thing?
If they do, it's not on the same day at all.
Okay, yeah.
They definitely didn't have a holiday this weekend. Oh, we've lost Billy.
But yeah, there is a lot of us. I'm back, I think. Pretty sure I'm back. I hear you.
Great.
I see you.
The baby touched things it wasn't supposed to?
No, just the world.
Okay.
Are you there? I see you.
I am.
Blinking. Okay. Yes, no, I'm on my third cup of coffee. It's 7:02 in the morning. Life is progressing. How are you, Colin?
I am concerned about your internet connection at this exact moment is what I am. Oh, we might be through the worst of it now. Yeah, things are okay for me. I don't have a lot to report. Excited for 10th for sure. I went to sleep last night thinking, why do we got to wait so long? I love new. I got a whole bunch of friends that are going to come over the weekend it comes out. We're going to play a bunch so we can start getting all that data you need, right? When it first comes out, it won't be obvious what's good and what's not. It won't be solved. And it won't be solved for a long time. So you'll get to try all types of different things and try to see what works and what doesn't. And the fact that the game has changed so much means that we will all be learning together. It won't be, oh, well, we know that this is good, so this is our baseline. No, you don't know that that's good. You're going to figure it out with the rest of us, and I love that. I think that is the most fun is trying things and see if they work. For me. What do you think, Billy? Other than having a baby, what's going on with you?
It was largely that first Mother's Day with my wife being a mother, so that was a big deal. Trying to get a few games of 40K in at some point, but totally agree with 10th. One of my favorite ways to process game information is if you're familiar with a guy named Mark Rosewater. He's the head designer of Magic the Gathering since forever, and he talks about the hash browns theory of game design. That the best part of the hash brown is the crunchy outer layer, and the inside is good, but that crunchy outer layer is best. And the crunchy outer layer is the discovery and experimentation that comes with something new. And I completely agree. That is where my fun is. I completely agree that we do not know enough, and everything that we do know needs to be filtered through a very different prism because there are enough fundamental changes, it appears, coming in 10th that we are probably misevaluating things. The amount of effort and energy they're putting into Battle Shock seeming to matter compared to the mental heuristics of the past 6 years that leadership just doesn't. I think that's going to just require a huge adjustment. That said, I personally, thus far through all of the previews, have yet to see anything that I think is on the power level of Loyalist Marines. But that is my take at the moment.
I've certainly seen some things that I have a lukewarm take to. I've been whelmed a few times.
I've been whelmed a lot. I have been happily whelmed. And the more I think about, teasing, the main thing that I know you and I were excited for this morning was the Aeldari preview. I think there is a little bit more in there, and maybe given the way you, Colin, have expressed you most want to play Eldar, I think there's an exciting option there. And I think some of the armies that we're going to talk about today have what I think is a good top level of power level. I just personally have yet to see anything that looks on the same tier as Oath of Moment and Doctrines, personally.
Right. Fair. I think that it's very hard because GW and Warhammer community has a long history of not knowing what to preview.
Yes.
Like, one of the things that I'm getting no value out of is that each of these preview articles has a heavy weapon from a tank, from a vehicle, and it says, look at this! And I'm like,
big numbers.
Okay, well, that has a big strength number, and it has a big damage number, and it has a big AP number. Well, huzzah, I feel so informed. Like, it doesn't matter how a Baneblade cannon compares to a Fire Prism gun. Like, just as an example. Like, that doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter how much strength and damage a Fire Prism does till we see what's out there. Yeah. So I think it's weird that they keep being like that. But in general, I suspect we're not seeing the best stuff. We are, in the Eldar one in particular, we are seeing a massive simplification of 40K. And so I'll want to talk about that for sure, because I think the Eldar one tips their hand a little bit more than some of the other ones do. So we'll talk about that for sure. But for now, let's get into our top story, because I bet it's related to what we're talking about. Here we go.
Our top story.
Our top story is a special shout out to all the moms out there. Yeah. I would imagine that almost no moms listen to this show, but the ones that the 3 moms out there that listen to this show, thank you for being moms. It's great. If you didn't call your mom and she's someone worthy of your time, reach out. Tell her that you love her. And something that people don't remember to do is to reach out to women that have been very significant in their lives that aren't moms. Use it as an opportunity to remember that. So, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. What's our other top story, Billy?
Our other top story is that 10th is coming. We're getting these wonderful previews. And I'm just going to allow us to indulge ourselves. You and I both probably identify most with Craft World Aeldari, high elves as they were. You had we have not discussed this at all. You seem to have read a lot into it. I personally am curious your thoughts on Aeldari. So 10th writ large with a faction focus on Aeldari, because that's what we love.
Okay. So Fate Dice, first of all, I don't like how similar Fate Dice and Miracle Dice are. Mechanics are incredibly similar. Miracle Dice for the sisters, Fate Dice for the Eldar. How they get them is different. But basically, you roll dice and you set them aside like you did Miracle Dice in previous editions, and you use them in die rolls before you roll, which is important. And that's what they do. And you get 12 of them at the beginning, and there's a mechanic for playing Yahtzee with them and losing dice to get to reroll some number of them. And I imagine a little bit of that will make sense. We get 12 at the beginning of the game, and then they said that it shows on the Farseer that you can get one additional one for each objective you're holding at the beginning of your... What?
Guardians gave you extras. Farseers let you turn them into 6s.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And that gets us to the Farseer. So first of all, let's talk about that die roll mechanic. I think that is substantially easier for your opponent than the current mechanic. The current mechanic being that everything's a 6, but your opponent has to understand
which they are.
The complicated what's an advance and what's a charge in your 6 dice. This is just, I have a bunch of dice over there. You can see them. You will not be able to prepare for it because there'll just be too many options for the Eldar player. It gives us the ability to roll low when we need to. I don't know that you need to roll low ever anymore in the new 40K. Because you roll under your battle shock, so maybe it's useful for that.
No, you roll over it. That's why lower numbers are better. Like a 5 is good because then it's easy to roll a 5.
Okay. So what do you think of that? What do you think of the way that they've changed Fate Dice?
I agree with everything you said. Just reading the Fate Dice piece and seeming like 12 was the max that you were going to get. I did some quick math in my head, and you got 20 beforehand. at a minimum, without doing anything, 5 battle rounds, you got to keep 4. So a lot less. Having them not be 6s is a huge downgrade. Having more at once is good. You can, if you want, you can blow 12 dice in your first turn. I think that would be a challenge given that you have to pace them out. I think the fact that, like, for example, a hit roll doesn't need to be a 6. It can probably be a 3+. And a lot of wounds can also be 3s. So it's really just your 1s and your 2s that are really going to be tough to use. And maybe, you have a crazy short charge where I literally just need this to be a 2. And that can guarantee it. Your 1s, to your point, 1s used to be great for leadership. They're not as good now. I am okay with this. I think original Fate dice were probably at the top of what power level should be for factions. This mid to upper whelmed, not overwhelmed, not whelmed, not underwhelmed. I can accept this.
Okay, me too. I think it's fun. I think it'll be fun. I think it's simpler than the current system. Yeah, and it encouraged us to take Guardians, and I believe the Guardians should be on the table. Just in general, like not the rules at all. Just it's Eldar. I believe they should have Guardians.
If we can jump to that part of it, I think that was the part that really flipped this mechanic for me, because the Guardians you gain a Fate dice for every objective you control with a Guardian on it. That can be 3 extra Fate dice a turn. Yep. Can be more in theory, and that can very quickly get you up above the 20. And I think just from what we've seen, that seems to push you hard towards Guardians. And that's why I said I thought you, Colin, might be excited, because I know you said you like Guardians. They're potentially my least favorite unit in the entire army. So it's the fact that I think they are going to be necessary to Eldar armies. Just it's not the direction that I enjoy with the faction.
Fair. Let me now talk a little bit about my concern, which I'm being very careful about because we're trying to be mostly hype about 10th edition. It's my understanding that psychic powers don't exist.
Correct.
I mean, they don't exist the way they are today. They're on your data sheet. So with that in mind, I would like to talk about the massive nerfing of Farseers. The unbelievable, mind-blowingly aggressive nerf of Farseers. So first of all, they lost a wound, and I think that's just insulting.
Well, that's funny. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. Or maybe, because the Skyrunner's 6 and the normal guy's 5, right, today? Yeah. This bro's only 4. So first of all, that's just pouring salt in the poor Farseer wound. Ha! See what I did there?
Yes.
And it has Eldritch Storm, which is a psychic power, but it's a 24-inch D6 attack that does D3 damage. First of all, GW, I thought we were on the same page that you were going to get rid of D3 damage. First of all, that's very disappointing to me. Nothing needs to have D3 damage.
It strikes me, that strikes me as a better smite than most people are getting.
No, because it goes through, because you have to roll to hit it.
It's strength 6 AP2, which I think is better than a lot of the smites that have been 5-1.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like just the profile of that. I read that as sort of smite and executioner had a baby that leans more towards smite than executioner, and this is what it ended up with.
Yeah. Okay. And then the Farseer also has fortune, which you put on a unit on a 2-up. I hate that you do it on a 2-up.
Yeah.
Within 12, one unit within 12, everybody gets -1 to wound against it. That's cool, but where's Doom?
Or Guide.
Or Guide, right? Or Executioner.
Or Will of Ashurian.
Or Will of Ashurian. That's a huge amount of the fluff of the Eldar army for me. So, and by the way, you can use Strands of Fate on Battle Shock and damage, which you could not before. Somebody pointed that out.
Absolutely. And as Gangrel in here points out, Farseers can make Fate dice B6s once It looks like you can do that once per turn, regardless of how many Farseers you have. Although in GW fashion, it's kind of hard to tell.
No, it's not. The special abilities on a data sheet, you can only use one of them across all of the units of that kind per turn. They were clear about that. So, like, the Gaunts have the thing where if you move near them, they can move away. Only one unit of Gaunts can do that each turn.
Oh, okay. Then if they have elsewhere been clear about that, then I am less frustrated by their lack of technical writing skills. Given how much Eldar rely on their psychics, I am going to hold off and say that maybe they have stratagems that are 0 CP if you have a Farseer that are Doom and that are Guide. I'm not quite sure how you fit that into the amount of stratagems they're supposed to have. That would be a very Doom and Guide have been in the game since 2nd edition. That would be a very big thing to just pull out.
Maybe Doom will be. Somebody's pointing out that the bike guy could have different powers.
Maybe.
Sure, he could.
Yeah.
Sure, he could. Eldrad could have different powers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with Eldrad having to be in every single Eldar army. I'm fine with that. I like Eldrad.
Yeah. So I think that there's not, and I think that the comments are spot on. We just don't know enough.
Yeah.
But I am concerned about the Eldar army feeling bland. I am concerned about that. And I'm concerned about that because Fate dice are basically, they're incredibly similar to Miracle dice.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need two Sisters armies. I presume Eldar will be faster and more fragile than Sisters are.
Yeah.
But we don't see that in this preview. So I am whelmed. I'm excited that Fate dice seems fun still.
Yeah.
But there's nothing else in that preview that I'm particularly excited about. But that's because they showed the things that are the power of Eldar today and said, look, they're like a quarter of the power. Isn't that great? So
yeah. And to be fair, the Eldari book, especially when it came out, was probably too good. It would be not in the absolutely, NIDS and AdMech, what are you doing with this book good, other than the Harlequin gunboat that I'm too tired to remember the name of, that was too good. But so we should be whelmed compared to that book. That book was too good. You didn't play the army from time to time because it was too good for you and it eliminated your fun. I think in general, you want the book to be released as like a high A tier kind of a book. This just feels a little bit more low A, B tier to me without any of the information that we actually need. And Eldar so rely on their tricksiness, the little itty bitty interactions that require the whole picture. We do not have that.
Right. We do know that Fire and Fade is better.
How? Just tell me how.
It's their movement rather than a standard number.
Normal move, yeah.
Which means if you Fire and Fade a bike, it goes really far.
Yeah, that's really good.
It means that you can shoot with your bikes and then Fire and Fade onto an objective that's very far away.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I think a Guardian heavy army, if you're just cranking out boatloads of extra Fate dice, and they have a good gun, they have AP on their Shuriken catapult. Now, they don't seem to have Shuriken rules, but if Guardian defenders are cheap, Guardian Horde looks like it might actually be pretty decent. Farseers turning them into being mini transhuman, not the worst thing in the world. We need to see a lot more to be able to render judgment on Eldar.
Yeah. And similar, I feel the same way about AdMech.
Okay, let's
see how I transitioned there like a pro.
You've been doing this for years. I can't even hope to live up to it. I can only hope to learn.
Well, your charm is without peer. So AdMech, it feels, from what they've told us, very bland.
Oh, really?
AdMech's like, this turn, would you like an extra AP on your shooting or on your close combat? Which one would it be? Guess what? Yeah. That's not as good as Fate dice, and that's not as good as Miracle dice, and that's not as good as Oath of Moment. But that is a rule, for sure. They do talk about how the Ruststalkers go faster by being near battle line units. Great. They show big guns, which we know are meh. Someone points out John and Delicate. as we like to call him, points out that you don't have to shoot to use Fire and Fade. And it's at the end of the turn, or into the phase, which is also way better than it is now, because it means you can see overall what's happened before you do it. You can see if you've killed the threat to the unit you wanted to use it on, as an example. Yeah. Anyways, back to Admech. I was confused where the flavor was in this. Call has a lot of words on his sheet, so good job him. But the big takeaway I had is he makes people more efficient around him. Was the big takeaway I had. What do you think of Admech?
I think I warmed to Admech more than you did. I think that Admech was too complicated. The ninth book was too complicated. You have talked about how even unintentionally, you don't think anyone's ever not gotten stuff wrong when playing a game of Admech. I love a good Rube Goldberg machine of an army. That was too many moving parts. This is fewer moving parts, but I don't know. To me, it actually did sort of feel fluffy, and maybe that a lot of that is just the naming and such. But like the concept of rad bombardment and the fact that they use the concept of radiation as their power worked for me. I thought that the rad bombardment was interesting and is going to lead to interesting questions in the first turn. I think, as I thought about it, I think you're probably going to just accept that your entire army is battle shocked turn one, because it doesn't matter if you're objective controlled, because that doesn't count until the start of turn two. And if you're blowing your load on stratagem so hard turn one, you're playing more like me than an intelligent, measured player should. So my sense is you just sort of accept battle shock turn one, rather than, I think the math on 3+ into D3 wounds is sort of like on average a little under 1 mortal wound per unit, which becomes just sort of annoying to track. Although I think sisters are going to love it. They're like, yes, please kill 1 model from each of my units, because they're like Aeldari and they just get better when they die.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I just,
by the way, that mechanic is a massive feel bad for your opponent.
I think it's a massive feel bad if you put no thought into it. I think you can I think it can become a very interesting question.
Okay.
I think that they have the appropriate amount of rules for each of their units now, as opposed to 3x that. I don't know. Admech were actually one of the armies that I thought had the more interesting and appropriate power level preview from this last week.
Okay, fair. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, we've discussed sisters quite a few times. What are your thoughts on sisters?
So their fate dice are exactly the same as far as I can tell, but
one notable exception.
They get them differently.
You can't use 2 of them in a charge anymore.
I don't think you can for the Eldar either.
No, but you could use 2 fate dice or 2.
Stop. I'm saying that they're the same as new fate dice.
Oh, yes, that's true.
The mechanics are the same. They just get them differently. They get a certain amount at the beginning, and I'm going to be honest, folks, it's 7:00 in the morning, and I don't remember how many it is. But they get a certain amount at the beginning, and then they get 1 every time a unit of theirs dies.
Yeah.
Cool. Perfectly fine. Do I like that this mechanic and the Eldar mechanic are the same? No, I don't. I don't think that that's good flavor, but that's probably me just being difficult, and I acknowledge that. What were your other big takeaways from sisters? They get better as they die. That's dope. I've played enough Aeldari to know that that's a really fun mechanic.
It is, and like I said, it shifts the power level a bunch of weird random stuff and can lead to people making bad decisions at least once. Like, I will randomly shoot you with my bolt pistols in this unit. Thank you for killing 1 model. You've now powered me up by 40%.
Right.
And they're the right sort. They can take large enough units, and they're the right sort of fragile that units will die. It just is going to require some thinking. I think that the fact that you can only use 1 miracle dice on a charge as opposed to 2 the way you could now, to my understanding from listening to smart sisters players, that is going to fundamentally change the way the army works. Because
so is everything else that's happening right now.
Yeah, but like they're built around 100% 12-inch charges, 100% charges out of deep strike, and they just don't have that anymore. And that feels very big and different to me.
Unless they can deep strike in 7 away, and we don't know that.
That's true. That is true.
Even 8 away means that they need a 2-up on their second die if they have a 6.
Yeah. I think the Triumph is awesome now. The fact that it's infantry, so it can walk through walls and can be attached to units, so it just has like infinite ablative wounds, and then it has some really good abilities. I think instead of Vol being the thing that goes into every army, it might be the Triumph, and I like that because I think the Triumph is awesome, and a disproportionate amount of Sisters players I know are really good at the hobby, and so they're going to make a really pretty Triumph, and that's going to be fun.
I think they should take damage every time they walk through a wall, because I would imagine that going through walls while carrying a coffin is really difficult.
They use the coffin to Kool-Aid man through the wall.
Yeah, that could be. Maybe someone should hobby it as having like a big ramming thing on the end of it. That'd be really great.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to look like a Viking longship with like a big pointy thing at the front. Anywho, what else about Sisters do you want to talk about?
The fact that the Exorcist on its anti-infantry profile has the rules that basically allow it to ignore the indirect penalties.
Yes.
But it's AP0, so I think, to my mind, that is a fair balance on it. Like, you will just get your full save. And honestly, I think Exorcists are so iconic that they can be good. Good indirect is always a problem. This feels to me like good, not oppressive indirect.
I guess. I don't think indirect is good for the game in that it encourages people to not just hide.
Mm-hmm.
But so does speed, and so does close combat.
Yeah.
And those are two mechanics that I think are healthier than this. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yes.
What are we missing?
You got
World Eaters and Votan?
In terms of armies, yes. Who do you want to talk about? Which angry people? People who are mad at you because you've been mean to them in the past, or people who are mad at you because they just want skulls?
Well, I only skimmed the World Eaters one because I haven't played against them currently, and I don't know that army that well. So, Billy, why don't you tell us all about World Eaters?
If I have one thought about what 10th is going to be, is that it seems like it might end up feeling a lot like Horus Heresy, and that you're going to see a lot of power armor on the board, because I think World Eaters got really good rules. Blessings of Khorne, you roll 8 dice, and you get some abilities based on what Yahtzee combination you get, and really think of it like a Yahtzee combination. Once someone explains the math to you, a lot of these are way more likely, like most of these are basically a 2-up that you're going to have these. And in a lot of cases, a re-rollable 2-up.
Okay.
And a lot of them are really good, like automatically sustained hits and lethal hits. So like you get double hits that I'm not sure how sustained and lethal work in terms of the auto wounding, but it's also something like 80% to get plus 2 inches of movement and advance and charge. That's, as we've talked about, advance and charge is probably the most powerful thing that a close combat army can get. And you are very likely to get it with World Eaters. We have not seen enough of the non-Angron stuff to know exactly how hard they're going to hit. It looks like they probably hit about the equivalent to where they do now in 9th compared to 9th, as opposed to 10th compared to 10th. The Berserkers have a neat thing where if you shoot them, they can just end up in combat with you if they're close enough, because they move d6 inches, which is, you have to think real hard about shooting Khorne Berserkers. And on top of it, they have a fun stratagem of like, you shot me off an objective, doesn't matter, I still get it. Angron, after reading his data sheet, I went and looked and saw how much he costs, and there's a world where I spend $170 on an Angron because he's real good. He can hide now. He can move really far. He gives good abilities. He comes back, I would say, better now because he comes back at full wounds remaining and you can mess with the dice that it's with some regularity. I don't know. I think Angron went from being the wrong choice because of the Pig Lord who had the Warlord trait to probably the right choice. And as someone who likes big centerpiece models on the table, that makes me happy. I think that World Eaters are right up there near the best of the previews we've seen.
Okay, great. I don't have much to say about that. It is the only army we've seen where they've really focused on telling us about close combat. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting.
Makes sense because they don't do anything else.
Right, but I'd like to see more of that. I think that they focused a lot on shooting. Of course, they've had AdMech and Votan and stuff, but I'd like to see more about close combat. A big part of the Eldar reveal for me was like, really, no aspect warriors, no close combat, no Phoenix Lords, like nothing, no Avatar, like none of the things that like are so Eldar.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, by the way, not to rain on the World Eater parade, but I wonder if Dark Reapers are done being penalized.
Their new models are gorgeous. I would love it.
Yeah.
And they spent a good chunk of time in the penalty box.
Yeah, like an entire edition.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Okay, so let's talk about Votan.
Yes.
I think it's really interesting how they simplified Grudge.
Okay, say more.
Well, it basically says, do you get +1? Do you get reroll ones to hit, or do you get reroll ones to wound, based on how many Grudge tokens there are?
You get both for 2.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Or do you also get reroll ones to wound? And then you get a Grudge token every time a unit of yours is killed by a unit of theirs, and you put a Grudge token on them, right? So similar to what it is now, significantly less good than what it is now.
Yeah, they took Grudges out behind the woodshed.
The farseer treatment, as it were.
It's hard to say which one got hit harder, and it's what you're comparing it to. Like when you compare this to what Grudges were when they were first previewed versus this, especially considering that most Votan are BS4 now, so this is just getting them to hit on 3s. My take is that Votan are going to have to be a much more horde army because the power level is wildly, drastically different than where they started, which is necessary because where they started is the most offensively broken thing I think any of us have ever seen in the wild.
But then it got nerfed too hard.
It got nerfed hard enough that you need to really care to want to run them, but people aren't having success with Votan.
That's true.
But they're having success with like relatively small model count armies. And if this remains a small model count army, I just worry that they have the punch to stay around with the rules that we have seen. Votan left me the most aggressively whelmed of anything that we've seen thus far. I have in the Games Workshop larger oeuvre identified as a elf player for 1.5 Bortels. Dwarves are my frenemies for decades. Like they're good guys, but they're the good guys I don't want to team up with. I feel bad for dwarves.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that their core rules certainly got nerfed. What the rest of their rules look like, we obviously don't know. One thing I did want to comment on is with the dwarves, how beams are different, right? I'm sorry, guys. My brain just... I was ready to talk about beams, and then I spazzed on... I thought they were different.
So they are. It does, unless I'm very much misunderstanding it. They don't like. It's not the old burning head rule where you draw a line and you just hit everything that you draw a line through. They have sustained hits D3 in general. So 6s to hit are going to be D3 additional hits, and then the way conversion works is there's it's critical hits on a 4+ if you're more than 12 inches away. So it's like guaranteed Tesla. You're going to get a lot more hits than you have shots, but you're not going to be hitting multiple units. You can, it seems, line up against beams now, and just one thing is going to die as opposed to everything dying.
Right. Okay. And then the one other thing we didn't talk about for them is they do have a stratagem that says that if you shoot me, I can shoot my unit back at you. Yeah. Does it matter if I died? No. Does the unit need to wipe? No. Does anyone in the unit need to die? No. That's an incredibly powerful stratagem. So it doesn't have any requirements. It's just dagga.
My question on that, though, is it looks like only the models that are still alive get to do the shooting.
True.
So just kill them.
Fair. The other thing I was going to comment on is at the beginning of the game, they pick a unit from their opponent's army. Wait, hold on. And that unit starts with 2 judgment tokens, and then they get CP for how quickly they kill it. And
Yeah.
I think that's neat flavor. That's all.
It is, and that could mean that you're getting more CP. And we have not really. I have not spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that it seems you start with 0 and you get 1 player turn. So you're starting with very few CP.
Did they say you start with 0?
I have that in my head. I'm not sure why I have that in my head.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that. I've been wondering the same thing.
But actually, as I think about it more, the fact that AdMech can battle shock your entire army. Well, if I only have 1 CP, I'm not going to care about not using stratagems on that turn when I have 1 CP available to me. So maybe you're able to start with more. Otherwise, that's actually a lot worse.
Could be. Okay, so before we go talk about tournaments, as you'll notice, everybody, we're pivoting harder and harder from how much time we spend on 10th and how much time we spend on 9th. I did want to shout out that we have a new show on the network, Billy.
Yes.
The wonderful Joe and Noah have created a show called The Best Overall Show to go with our theme as the best in tabletop network. Noah and Joe are accomplished hobbyists. Oh yeah, that's true. All the test games for Warhammer Fest did say 0 CP, but those were test games, so who knows? Anywho, best overall show. They're going to talk about how to win all of it, the whole shebang: sportsmanship, hobby, and generalship. How do you win it all? How do you do it all at the same time? They are charming. They are funny. They know a lot. Right now, it's on our YouTube. Today or tomorrow, it should hit the podcast stream feed. I should warn you guys, they are using visual entertainment. So if you are a normal podcast listener, you might want to watch it on YouTube. But everything's free, so you can just do that. So big shout out to Best Overall, the best overall show. It'll be every other Thursday is what they're thinking at the moment. But we'll obviously get those dates out when we know what they are. Okay. What army are you most excited to see that we haven't had previewed yet, Billy?
Space Wolves, but more broadly, any non-codex Marines. I just want to get a sense of what the non-codex detachment looks like.
Okay. All right.
Yourself?
GSC, I think, at this point, but maybe Drukhari.
Yeah. Do we know
with Drukhari, I own a massive Drukhari collection, and I haven't actually gotten to play them that much. I would love it if they were good again. I thought their book was actually the point at which we all realized that GW might have a problem with their playtesting and review process.
Yeah.
That was the book that established what Broken Books was going to look like in 10th edition, excuse me. So I don't know what this is going to be like for them, but man, do I love dudes and raiders jumping out and hitting things. And there's so many cool models in that army. Mm-hmm. And there's so much, like I have 6 unbuilt Talos / Kronos boxes in my hobby room because they were good. And then right as I started building them, they became trash. So there's lots of things that could happen there. I think that's exciting. Do Harlequins still just go into other elf armies? That's a great question.
Yeah. We're gonna have to. I think they have the thumbnail of everything that's getting previewed. I would have to look more closely to see if they're Harlequins.
Well, they only show what the next couple are.
So they showed every single army that's going to get its own bespoke like data card sets, and it was a giant collage. And then they're using the thumbnails here in the articles and they're saying what's next: tomorrow's Death Guard. So from fastest army to slowest army, from prettiest army to smelliest army. But yeah, it's possible to look and just see if clowns are getting their own thing. They've established that they get at least their own rules. So, and they did not preview them at all in Aeldari. And that would have been the place if they just went into Aeldari.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Who else are we missing that's super interesting? We haven't seen Knights. They're obviously important.
Interesting to see.
Do we see Tau? We haven't seen Tau.
We haven't seen Tau.
Orcs. Orcs are the other big iconic one that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that orcs are the most iconic one we haven't seen yet.
I am surprised that we got Chaos Space Marines World Eaters and Death Guard, so 3 Chaos Power Armor armies before we're getting orcs.
Yeah. if you guys don't know this, maybe you're newer to 40K. There's a level of passion that the orc players have for orcs that the rest of us can't relate to. Orc players and their orc armies have a very special, deep relationship that the rest of us can only hope to experience for a moment in our lives.
I agree.
All right. Here we go.
Indeed.
What's winning?
Things are winning. That's what's happening. I will be honest, guys. At this point, it seems like the meta is absolute chaos as we approach 10th edition. But we're going to talk about it anyways. I've got 2 tournaments to talk about. Billy's going to talk about another 1 or 2 himself. We are certainly seeing a couple things here. People don't want to go to a lot of tournaments right before 10th comes out, which is like next month. And also we're seeing that Mother's Day is a bad day to have a tournament in the United States. So, which is funny because GW Tacoma was on top of Mother's Day last year.
Was it really?
Yeah, and it was the reason I didn't get to go to it. So,
it's a wise choice.
First up, I want to talk about Storm of Silence. Excuse me. So, over on the east side of the state, there's a different meta from the meta that I normally play in. And the big store over there is Bob Kelly's Gamers Haven. Amazing store, wonderful tournaments. I've been going to them for 6-7 years. I didn't get to go to this one. Chuck did. Alex McDougall did very well. Lots of my friends were there. The outcome of it, now, it's a little bit of a weird event, and I do need to acknowledge that. Some of you are aware that Gamers Haven runs they run a hobby-focused event with weird missions. Mm-hmm. This is not that. This is the win at all cost competitive tournament. And it had 94 people, which is great. It used to be capped at 58 before Bob found a new place to do it.
Oh, good.
And it was won by Marshall Reeves, who's becoming a very well-known player. But he won with sisters. And what the heck? Come on now. Bloody Rose, Hospitaller, Repentia Superior, Canonist, Triumph, yep. 2x5 Battle Sisters, a big unit of Vitiates. I love them, and people don't appreciate them enough. I like how inexpensive they are for how many wounds they are. I like that they can get a whole bunch of attacks if you buff them up correctly. I think that they're a really excellent screen if you're playing against orcs and you have a close combat army bearing down on you. Really love them. Anywho, he has a big unit of 10 Sacrosancts and then another unit of 5, a Dogmata, 3 Paragon Warsuits, 2x5 Repentia, 1x8 Repentia, Dominion Squad, Zephyrum Squad, Retributor Squad. These are all 5s. And then Immolator Rhino. Now, what I want to comment to you guys is you can never say that you know how a list is going to do by looking at it. Because this list has a bunch of things in it that I think are trash. Because you don't always know. And the generalship of the player matters a lot. It could be that he's repped this list 100 times. It could be that he has a very specific plan for how he's going to address the big bads in the meta. Frankly, great job to Marshall. Very impressive win with Sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Second up, we have Alex McDougall, longtime friend of the show, member of Art of War, the best Canadian 40K player on the planet is what I'm going to say without any science behind it. That's just what I'm going to say. That is a little bit. It's a little bit like being the most civilized monkey in a zoo. Okay, that was just mean to Canadians. The great thing is they're not going to stand up for themselves. They're probably just going to apologize. I'm going to stop bashing Canada and we're going to move on.
I will just say, watch Canadian Bacon. It does this awesomely and with love.
It's true. Go ahead and riff for a minute.
Okay, so for those of you who are not an old like the two of us, Canadian Bacon is a movie with John Candy, who's a very, very funny man from the 80s and 90s. Nice, big, jolly, green giant kind of a dude. And they decide to invade Canada because did you know that Canada is poised to invade the United States? 90% of the population lives within 100 miles of the border. They're just waiting to bear down on us and kill us all. Mm-hmm.
It's true. Give her back pronto or we'll level Toronto. Okay. Alex McDougall, by the way, that movie might not be fun anymore. As old as we should give that.
Yeah, it might have aged horribly. based on when I last saw it.
My favorite part of that movie is when they write terrible things about Canada on the side of their truck, and they get pulled over by the Mountie, not because they were bashing Canada, but because where they are, the signs are required to be in English and French. And so Dan Aykroyd stands there and watches them as they paint all of the same offensive things on their truck in French. Really great. Second up is Alex McDougall, and he has himself some Gene Stealer cult. This is very similar to what the medalists have looked like. 3x5 acolytes, 80 neophytes, Nexus, Saboteur. He only ran 1 unit of 10 bikes and 1 unit. He only ran 2 units of 10 bikes rather than 3. So super significant, way different, super good tech. Actually, Alex is just an amazing player and deserves every win he gets. Third place, I'm really excited about because this is a great dude from our meta who's very good. His name is Donald Plummer. He's a Tau player, and I like him a great deal. He's playing for Team Aegis, which is the store we talked about before as being saved from ignorance. So this is a Borcan list, which I haven't seen a lot of in a while. He's got himself an Enval, Commander in Cold Start, Commander in Crisis, 2 marker drones, Crit Shaper, Breacher, 10 Breachers, 10 Breachers, big unit of Crisis suits with the SIBs, the cyclic ions, plasma rifles, and target lock, Firesight Marksman, big unit of, unit of 3 stealth suits. His battle scribe is weird here, guys, sorry. Unit of 5 Crits, Riptide, 2 bombers, which I thought were terrible now, and a Devilfish. So here we have another thing that tells me, Colin, you don't understand what's good from Tau. Great. Third place is, by the way, big shout out to Donald yet again. That was third place, excuse me. Fourth place is Kaz. Kazra is an Art of War guy. He's a good player, incredible hobbyist from Western Canada. Kaz had himself a fantastic army of Ultramarines. Kaz's Ultramarines, by the way, are offensively well painted.
Yeah, those are beautiful. I love it.
Like you look at them and you think, why did I try? So Tiggy, and then another librarian. So rocking the 2 librarians here. He's got Veil, Null Zone, Psychic Fortress, Mind Raid, Temporal Corridor. He's just got all these psychic powers, which is weird. We don't see that in Marine lists right now. I presume at the bottom of this list we're going to have Bobby G, but I don't remember from looking at it before if we do.
Yeah, he's there.
So Incursor, Infiltrator, big unit of 10 intercessors, 3 aggressors, Primaris Ancient, Primaris Apothecary, the unit of 5 Terminators. Just get some Terminators in there. Of course, a unit of Desolation Marines because it's a Marine list. 2 unit of 5 Devastators, a drop pod, and Bobby G. Pretty straightforward. These are the things that are good for Marines. I've put them in a list, and I will kill you with beautiful Marines.
Yeah, good on him.
Yes. Our final event, my final event, excuse me, is the Clan Wars Scottish Open, which is a 57-player 5-round event. For this one, they had a top cut and had 2 people at the top. I was just going to talk about them. The winner was Brian Seep, who we've talked about quite a bit. I believe he regularly plays Eldar, but I could be mistaken. He had himself a custom Eldar list that was rocking Relic of the Shrines and... Oh, sorry, that's not the right thing. I am literally being silly right now. It is a Hail of Doom list. I apologize greatly. 3 Warlock Skyrunners and a Warlock. So people love taking a whole bunch of Warlocks now. That's just a thing that's happened for Eldar. So this is, a big unit of Warlocks and then a 1 unit, 1 Warlock by himself. Baharoth and Karandris, which is, 310 points between 2 characters. It's a lot. They're both good. Farseer Skyrunner. So what I think is so interesting about the way people are playing Eldar now is, let's see, 310, 440, 570, 690. He has 750 points of characters. So, well over a third of the list, for almost 40% of the list, if his list is characters. I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't understand how that works. Brian must be an incredible general. when I'm making a list and I see all these characters, I think, yeah, but what else could I have for Baharas points, and would they be better? Right? And that's why I always end up with only one Phoenix Lord. One unit of Rangers, 3x10 Dire Avengers, because it's hail. A unit of Striking Scorpions and Banshees, love it. Great fast close combat to go with your Wind Rider, to go with your hail. Unit of 9 Wind Riders of Shuriken Cannons, of course, and then a unit of Shroud Runners and a unit of Shining Spears, followed by one poor, lowly Warwalker. Yeah, things that are good from Eldar played at an incredibly high level is my review of that. Mm-hmm. I will shout out Innes from StatCheck, got third place with his Iron Hands. Okay. So, Billy, how many of your tournaments do you
want? I think he brought White Scars.
No, he did not. Really?
He did bring White Scars. Yeah.
I thought I looked at it and said, "Oh, this is Iron Hands. I don't need to talk about it." Hold on.
It's punchy White Scars. 20 Terminators, 15 Van Vets.
I apologize. Then that's great. Good job, Innes. That sounds like super fun. Cool. Yeah. All right. So, how many of your events are we going to talk about?
Well, let's see where we're at after one. The Saffron Walden GT in England, 45 players, 5 rounds, won by regular person that I talk about at the top of events, Jack Tite. He brought Chaos Demons, and he brought it as a Be'lakor Army of Renown. He then just brought a basic normal demons list. The interesting thing was 2 brigands, the Helverin Shooty Knights. Seeing some Beasts of Nurgle popping up, he had those as well. Second place was Johnny Simmons with Admech. Basically Lucius Infantry Horde with 5 Las Chickens and 9 Doggos in 3 units of 3, but something like 80 Rangers and Vanguard between them. Seeing some Admech crop up, they certainly spent a lot of time in the penalty box, but I always just like seeing Admech armies because I think they look really cool. So congrats to Johnny. Third place, Mike Chang brought Death Guard. Brought an interesting Death Guard army, a Lord of Virulence and a Plague Caster, 25 Plague Marines. Really, the Lord of Virulence was the interesting thing. 2 bloat drones, 2 spawn, 2 PBCs, so on and so forth. I'm actually very curious to see what they do with Death Guard in the preview tomorrow, because I do think Death Guard really suffered from being one of the first armies in 9th, and their shtick of being slow but tough, they ended up just not being like, what are they, the 3rd or 4th toughest army in 9th?
Slow is very hard to balance.
Yeah,
because the problem with slow is it makes seeing the angles of what your opponent's trying to do incredibly easy, and you can then play around it with armies that are much faster.
Yeah. But congrats to Mike. That's a great result. And then in 4th place, Josh French bought Chaos Knights, Abominant Desecrator, 1 Brigand, 2 Carnivores, 4 Stalkers. It's right about where Chaos Knights have ended up, is a real solid X and 1 showing. But congrats to Josh there. And since there's 7 minutes left, we'll talk about my last event that I prepped, the CTC Warhammer 40K Championship Open in Ottawa, Canada. A smaller event, 38 players, 5 rounds, but it was a short week this week. Bruno Choquette won with Chaos Demons that actually did something interesting. He brought no big demons, just 3 of the smaller Herald size, Flexmaster and Rapturous and a Transweaver, 40 Demonettes, 10 Pinks, 3 Beasts, 6 Fiends, 14 Flamers, 15 Fleshhounds, and a Skull Cannon. So much smaller and wider. And I think that's interesting. Second place, Maxine Rampin brought World Eaters with Angron. And anytime you bring Angron, it's worth mentioning. I do think you're going to see a lot more Angrons in 10th. Third place was Dominique Corrette with Space Wolves. Instead of bringing 3s of a lot of things and Wolfen, Dominique brought 2s of a lot of things. Brought 2 Tornadoes, which you don't see a ton of in Space Wolves, despite them just being objectively good units. And then 2 Helverins. But Space Wolves still doing well. And then in fourth place, Eric Marcoux with Imperial Knights. It was a free blade with 1 errant and then 10 small ones, 2 of which are Moirex, 2 Helverins, and 6 Warglaves. So, some normal army factions with slightly off meta versions of their armies there at the CTC Warhammer 40K Championship. To Colin's point, the meta is largely very open. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of variation within factions. Like 70-80% of your list is probably figured out, and then sprinkle the last 20 into taste. But I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different factions that we talked about between 16 armies.
Yeah, pretty surprising, honestly, after seeing so many weekends of the same things winning. Like, we didn't talk about Guard today.
No.
We didn't talk about Iron Hands today.
The fourth, or no, we thought the fourth was one. Iron Hands apparently for the weekend did incredibly well. They just didn't win a ton of big things, but their win rate was up at like 63%.
Fair enough. All right, Billy.
Yes.
So what unit in Space Wolves do you want to have be broken? Be so powerful.
Thunderwolf Cavalry.
Okay.
Let them walk through walls.
Dudes on wolves.
I think in any army, if I can answer cavalry or the cavalry equivalent, same conversation Eldar last time. Let me have my fast moving bikes that want to charge people. Dudes on wolves that want to charge people. I also spent way too much money cobbling together Thunderwolf Cavalry when the Space Wolf book first came out, only to realize that no, they actually weren't that good. But sourcing them from Australia because they were the only place they existed was a thing that I did.
We should have been friends. I would have warned you. I knew that they weren't good. I debated with Mitch on Best in Faction because I knew immediately that their bases are too big, and if they can't go through walls, they are not fast enough. So
some people made compelling points about the bases being too big being a feature, not a bug, and I just had to learn for myself.
Okay. Non-Eldar thing.
Yeah,
where I'm excited for one specific unit to be good, but not Eldar, not craft rolled Eldar at least.
Mm-hmm.
Incubi, love me some Incubi, love me some Hellions. I'm a big fan of Ravenwing, but they're so broken right now that I think it's unlikely that they'll be crazy good. Let's see, what else do I like? From Genestealer Cult, I want dudes and trucks to be viable. I think that that's a really fun way for Genestealer Cult to work.
Yeah.
I would like neophytes to not be 20-man neophytes to not be the only thing you should take. That's not fair. You should take bikes as well. Yeah. So from the armies I play, that's what I think.
You don't want Genestealers?
What's that?
You had so much success with Genestealers that moved 1,000,000 D-inches and punched pretty well.
Yeah, you're right. I did. I think that time has passed.
Okay.
I would like Shining Spears to be good from Eldar. So,
yeah.
All right, folks. With that, I think it's the end of our time. Leave us a comment about factions and units that you're most excited about. We'd love to see it. And we will be back with you guys next Tuesday, as we always are. And he is Billy, and I'm Colin, because someone has to be. And make sure to go check out the Best Overall Show and let us know what you think of it. And we'll be back soon. Bye, everybody. We'll miss you.
Horribly.
We'll miss you deeply.